Okay.
So, warm welcome to this month's episode of the Releasing the Real You show, where we cover anything to do with celiac disease, gluten-free lifestyle, and anything around it. And this month, I'm really excited to have a chat with Kim. Kim has a 16-year-old boy who's been diagnosed with celiac disease. And if you remember last month, I was chatting to Kate, who grew up with celiac disease. And I just thought it would be interesting to see, obviously, if there's a difference between girls, boys, and how, more importantly, they relate and they deal with celiac disease. So, all welcome, Kim.
Hi.
Lovely to have you here. So, how did you realize that your son was celiac or had celiac disease?
So it was during lockdown. We were just a part of the kind of realization about it was that he was in. We were in the house all the time, and we noticed just about the fact that there was like he was going to the toilet an awful lot, and just I think very much with kind of moods and kind of mood swings and finding things tricky, difficult to concentrate when he was trying to do online learning and things. But it was mostly the fact that it was just kind of sore stomachs all the time. And I think from being around the house, we talked about it more. Even things like maybe a wee bit more about what we were eating, we were more conscious of because we were all in the house together. So that was the kind of first indicator for us.
Mhm.
And so we'd then gone to the doctor about it. And we were really lucky, although you couldn't see a doctor. We had an online kind of phone call, and she was great. We were really, really lucky, actually. I know sometimes it is down to luck, but our doctor was very much like, no, let's get some blood tests, let's try and see. So that's kind of where the journey started for us.
Okay. So do you
He was,
think there were
we
some
then went
symptoms?
to the doctor's blood. Oh, sorry.
No, no, go. Do you think there were symptoms before that you just didn't realize because he was at school and stuff, or?
I think there must have been, and there's a lot of kind of factors when you look at it now that, and you find out so much more about it and all the different symptoms. There's things like, he always had problems with his ears, for example. He had perforated eardrums. He ended up with a hole in his ear. Like I say, the kind of like moods and how that would affect. Sometimes you would think it would be typical of a boy like or a child of that age, but actually thinking back, just how difficult it was for him, the kind of being more lethargic and things as well. He was also sporty, but the difference between like now and having had the post diagnosis in terms of being sporty is completely different to when he
Yeah,
was younger. So I think there probably were a few wee things, a few wee indicators.
yeah, that's interesting. So you feel the process was okay even during COVID?
Yeah, we were really lucky actually. I think it was we first of all had the doctor, and the blood levels weren't particularly elevated. So they weren't, I've heard of people being in the hundreds in terms of, and his was really in the threshold. So what they had said was, again, just through a good doctor, they said we still refer you to a dietitian because there's still obviously something that's irritating his stomach. And so it was a dietitian, it was a Zoom dietitian call, and very much more talking to myself and my husband. But they kind of asked a couple of questions of him, and they said one of the questions they kind of said was, how do you feel? I think actually at the end the dietitian said, it sounds like we'll just keep an eye on it and we'll maybe come back to this in a few months. And but then Aidan had said that the kind of final thing was that he turned around and said to her, I just want the pain to go away.
Mm.
And actually, I didn't even realise that it was quite as significant about that. So a child of that age to say that means that possibly he's just constantly been in pain, and he wouldn't know any different.
Hmm.
So I think, again, really fortunate the dietitian very much took on board that that was his words, and so sent him for an endoscopy. And
Yeah.
that kind of happened. We were really, I feel the whole process, having heard of other people's experiences, wasn't long. I think it was maybe October time, and then his endoscopy was April, and we found out in June. So we were really, really lucky in that respect. Unfortunately for him, we found out in the June of his final year of primary, so it was tricky for him. But at the same time, you know, he'll say himself, as frustrating as it is, he's glad he knows.
Yeah. Yeah. And how is there anyone else in the family that is celiac or you don't know or
We tested. Well, I had hurt my back about 12 years ago really badly, and a kind of random series of events, but I'd gone to see a chiropractor, and the chiropractor had actually said, do you know that your back is related to your stomach? And had said about kind of coming off gluten and trying that. So I did and instantly felt better. But the kind of issue was that, again, so much more awareness now. But
Mhm.
at the time, I'd then gone back to my doctor and we'd taken tests for celiac, but I was too far away from being off gluten.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, the thought of going on to gluten to be able to get the assessment is, I don't know if it outweighs the fact of knowing. So,
Mhm.
certainly that I've been gluten free for the last kind of 12 years anyway. So, probably not as strict as I am now because I follow his diet. So there was loads of things I didn't know about in terms of cross contamination and things.
Mhm.
So that's very much kind of evolved with through his diagnosis.
Yeah. So at home, you all gluten free or
So just Aidan and I at home, when we're in like the house, we'll do things like we'll make gluten-free pizza, pasta. We'll all just have
yeah.
gluten-free, because it's easier. But certain meals that, I'm just thinking there's a chicken pie on tonight, and there's a gluten version and two gluten-free versions. So
Mhm.
we try to kind of adapt as much as we can in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And I hear a lot of people who said to me, how can you have both in the house? And
Yeah,
I'm like, well, why not? Like when
yeah,
you go to a restaurant, they also have both. You just need to be
totally.
careful and a lot
Yeah,
of cleaning. Um,
absolutely. Yeah,
and just a few changes that you need to make, but
yeah,
it's not. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And how does he deal with it at school? Parties, socializing?
I think it's I don't know. Like there's a lot of it that's harder as a teenager. Some of it, he's in secondary now, so secondary and high school, and that's I would say at the time at first it was really tricky. This was 4 years ago now, so when he first kind of met the school, it was very much like you could have a baked potato, or you'd come to the front of the line, and or there was just kind of wee things like that where you're thinking, oh, he doesn't want to stand out, and it was all within a view to help. But now it's a packed lunch. He basically takes that for school.
Yeah.
If he goes to parties and things with friends, he's confident enough, I think, now that sometimes they'll take a pizza with them, for example. Although, as a mum, I'm thinking, oh, cross contamination, but that's a factor that he always has to think about. But he certainly, I'm glad to say, it doesn't stop him going out, which is good. Sometimes if they're going somewhere for dinner, he has, and maybe in the past he'll come back to us, or he's kind of got good friendships enough that he can maybe make the suggestion about where they go. But it is that extra layer for him to think about. It's hard, and especially as a teenager when you absolutely do not want to stand out.
Mhm.
You're doing exactly the opposite.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I don't know what you think about it, but I definitely think that that's much more prevalent with boys than it is
Oh
with
yeah,
girls. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that even I think there's it's great. There's quite a movement now in terms of promoting it for men and boys, and really kind of like a kind of community within that is forming, and through well, it's Instagram I'm on, but through the Instagram community you're finding so many more. But very much that kind of let's not talk about it, let's not make a fuss, um
Yeah.
is a big factor.
I think in general, like more men don't go to the doctors. And I,
Yeah,
I, I can't remember the stats exactly. I looked it up, but there's the percentage of women or girls diagnosed with celiac disease is way higher
yeah,
than men, which doesn't really make sense
yeah,
because, it should be around a 50-50.
yeah,
There's no reason why not, but it is most probably because, men don't go to the doctors to
yeah.
complain about what they have.
I think that's it. And I think because of, some of the symptoms and some of the things that you don't want to talk about publicly, then it's like it's not the easiest thing to have a conversation about. Um, and I think that, women are much better at kind of talking about it and gaining the support from it and things. And I think it's quite general. I don't mean to be like generalized about
Mhm.
it, but I just think I feel lucky that he was young enough that it we were kind of taking control of that. And like I say, his statement himself, he didn't want to be in pain anymore. So ultimately that's a deciding factor for anybody, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you feel is the hardest part of living a gluten-free life as a child, but also as a mum with a child with celiac disease?
I think it's quite hard because you're thinking about all the like well, for a teenager, I feel it's that kind of element of micromanaging and trying not to micromanage,
Mhm.
it's supporting but also giving him the space to do it. That's quite hard, and allowing him to be out with his friends and know that he's going to make these choices for himself to make himself feel better.
Yeah.
I think that's really hard. And I think that certainly he would say, if you ask him, and people have asked him before, the hardest thing for him is just the whole cross contamination. Like, you can, any day of the week, a lot of things will be gluten free, but going to a friend's house or going somewhere and being able to have that freely,
Yeah.
that's the factor that's different to the actual gluten, like not eating something with gluten, all the kind of
Yeah.
hidden kind of worries about that. I think that's
Mhm.
something that's hard.
Well, I think that's something we all worried about, I
Yeah,
think, with celiac disease. I mean, I know that most of the times, not all the time, but most of the times when I'm out the next day, things won't be
yeah,
100% right
yeah,
within my digestive system.
yeah.
And as much precautions as you can take,
Hmm.
unless you want to just eat at home and not go
Yeah.
out and stress about everything, which I'm not willing to do.
No,
As long as, you know, the blood tests are fine on a yearly basis, it
yeah,
means that, I am doing the right thing
yeah.
while still enjoying life for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that it was the first year after his blood tests, and the dietitian had obviously taken them and done the height and the weight and everything. And before she did the test, she said, "So roughly, like how much, like how gluten free do you think you are? Do you think you're doing it all the time?" And aware that she was speaking to a
Yeah.
teenager, and he kind of looked at me and he said, "I'm doing it 100%." And I think he just, it was a case of, right, well, I'm already gluten free. We'll just go for that.
Hmm.
And even then, like that, you don't know about toasters and
Sure.
separate butters and all these things. So you kind of learn as you go. But it was quite quick for us to just make that
Yeah.
change. But I think the kind of other thing that's quite tricky is, and again for a teenager as well, but for anybody with celiac disease, is that lack of spontaneity that you have. You can't just, go out for dinner, or when you're booking a holiday, you can't just be, walking into the first restaurant you see. There needs to
Mhm.
be that preparation.
Yeah.
Um, and like I say, if you're 16 years old and you're out playing football with your friends, you just want to be able to go for dinner. So
Yep.
things like that, I think, can be quite tricky for them.
100%. I think unless you're a foodie, and
Yeah,
then when you go on holidays, you do your research
yeah,
pre going on holidays, nothing to do with celiac disease.
yeah,
It's probably the only time that you would do some research about good restaurants to go to
yes,
and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, I can see that. And do you think, you know, in the next few years, obviously finishing school, going to uni, do you worry about it or
I think I think it's like I see, like I say, my biggest thing is, and I'm conscious of at that age not smothering them and not being that
yeah.
kind of like, oh, are you okay if you're doing that, and try to give that bit of freedom, because ultimately, he said it once to me before. He's like, I don't want to be sore. I don't want, so I'm doing it for myself as well, and it's not like I'm doing it for you,
Mhm.
in the nicest possible way. And I
Yeah.
know what he meant, and I think that it's that opportunity to kind of allow him to explore a wee bit more. And
Mhm.
to some extent, it's funny, when he was on study leave and he was home so much more, it wasn't just the being at home, it was just having a wee bit more freedom to eat
Yeah.
different things, or put something in the air fryer, or try out a different, like, taste, anything to avoid studying.
Hmm.
um, but I think it's just when he's older and he's maybe at uni or he's working, he could probably select different places. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're at school, you've got the packed lunch option and it's limited. So in some ways, I feel like there might be more opportunity for him to explore
Hmm.
different places when he's older. And I know when we go out or when he goes out, he will ask for the gluten-free menu and gluten-free options now and things. So yeah, I hope that as he kind of grows with it, that's something that becomes a bit second nature to him.
It probably caught it at an age where he still remembers how it felt.
Yeah,
He was old enough to remember how it felt,
yeah,
feeling unwell. Well, I
yeah,
think when you have it, you start with it when you're born or you're 2 years old or whatever.
yeah,
When you're late teenager, you actually don't really remember. And I
yeah,
wonder if then, the let's see what happens if
yeah,
comes in, which he probably doesn't have because
yeah.
he felt so
That's
bad
true.
about it.
Yeah, that's true, and I think that is, he's loves his sports and he's faster and he sees
Mm.
the gain and they've been able to sleep and he did. I'm so proud of him. He did really well in his exam results and things. And I know that
Yeah.
he's aware that that ability to concentrate on things is there now. So I think as much as it's frustrating because as a teenager you remember what you kind of grieve a wee bit of what you lost.
Mhm.
He had the pizzas and the
Yeah.
cakes and and he sees his wee sister at times. So there is that process that's hard. But the kind of gains, I'd like to think outweigh that at times.
Hmm. Does he have any friends around him that are gluten-free as well, or is he the only one?
Yeah, the only one just now, and there's a few, like Coeliac UK have got there's a kind of connect. There's for specific teens. They've got a page and a group for teens, and I do encourage him to do. But he needs to do that when he's ready.
Yeah.
And I think it's about him reaching out. So there's somebody within his school, a couple of people that I know that I've spoken to the parents and things. So there probably are people that are there. It's just I think it's a process for him. I kind of let him kind of go through that and see with the reaching out element. But the friends he's had for a while, and they're fully aware and would know, and they'll say to their parents, oh, he can't eat that, or he can't, like in a nice way, and he feels more comfortable with
Yeah.
that.
I think that makes it definitely easier when you got
Yeah,
good friends that look after you. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. But it still amazes me today how little some places know what they need to do
Yeah,
and not be able to cater for someone that's
yeah.
just beyond me. But
Yeah, and I think he's old enough as well. At that age, he has an opinion of that, so that does frustrate him, and he is aware, that it's not that difficult. It is an easy enough thing to try and do. And we're lucky, like close enough by. We have our local restaurant, for example. They bought in an air fryer, so they will air fry. They can pretty much do most things. So if you're doing like
mhm.
fries and things like that, they'll air fry that. Um, and it's separate, and and actually they know us when we come in now. It's like that, yep, in the air fryer, and so things like that do help because having to ask all the time can be tricky too.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I mean, I was in a hotel in last month, and when I had my bread rolls and lots of things with me. And
yeah,
as I was looking at the buffet, it said gluten-free menu. I
uh-huh.
said, "Oh, that's interesting." And then as I was looking at it, the waitress came up and she said, "Oh, are you gluten-free?" I said,
Mhm.
"Yes." She said, "Oh, I'll make you gluten-free toast in the kitchen." I'm like, "Wow, okay."
Oh,
Yeah.
instead of having to just put your gluten-free bread on the,
Yeah,
the
no,
on
no
the
need for that. I had brought my toaster bags with me as well,
yeah,
but didn't need them at all because
that's
I had a
nice.
dedicated. It's just makes you feel normal.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah. And we'd gone to a place that had been recommended through again a woman on Instagram who started up her own kind of travel agents about celiac
Mhm.
to support people. But it was we spoke to the manager in the morning and things, but it was things like he got his own pancakes made. And you just think, oh my goodness, normally it comes as a pre-packaged kind
Yeah.
of like breakfast, but he could order, and the same, whatever they gave, even if it was said it was gluten-free in front of everybody, because of cross-contamination, they made it in the
They made
kitchen.
in the kitchen, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
And it's funny because you celebrate these things so much, but actually you think, oh, if that was the norm, it would be great.
Yeah, no, and it should be normal. I mean,
Yeah,
people in the food industry should understand allergens and allergies, and
yeah,
there should just be much more awareness and knowledge and
yeah,
know-how as well. Because, as you say, I don't know, when you have a Sunday roast and making a cauliflower cheese,
yeah,
just use corn flour instead of flour, and
yeah,
no one will guess the difference anyway.
yeah,
So
absolutely. It's
it,
like finding an accidentally gluten-free thing in the shops. You're just like, wow, that's so exciting.
yeah, especially when it's the normal thing
Yeah, and the normal price.
at a normal price as well. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what would you do you think would be your top three tips for a mum or a parent of a child that's diagnosed with celiac disease or potentially more a teenager? What would be?
I think, yeah, definitely the kind of teenager bit, because it is that idea of the being older. I think that it's the given space definitely is well, I would say the first thing would be about a toaster, because I wish that like somebody had said that the very first thing to me. Get your own toaster, get your own, products and things. So that is obviously a side by the side, but I think the freedom and trying to kind of support them to try it themselves, but not to just be constantly, talking for them and things,
Yeah.
especially when they're teenagers. I think when children are younger, it is easier to do that, and it is easier to take charge of what they're eating, and to be able to help them with that. And I think that given the age he was, there's times where we could do that, but there's other times where, like for example, he said, I just want a packed lunch at school. I don't want to have to go, it said to him, you're entitled to a gluten-free lunch, and they would provide that for you, and they would adapt. And the school had said that to us, which was great. But he said, I just don't want that. And I said, okay. So it's just that kind of freedom, and maybe listening,
Hmm.
being a good listener for in that respect, rather than kind of jumping as a parent. You want to do that protection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So I think that's it. And definitely preparation is the key
Yeah,
for
planning
everything.
and preparation for sure.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Anything else you want to share or you want to?
I think it's just about, you know, I think if you're kind of it's just about being helping your child. If you're the mum, it's all you want to ever do, and you want them to be happy, but you need to give them that kind of freedom to be able to try these things for themselves. And um it sounds really silly, but there's like that tiny wee bit of pride every time he's ordering lunch or ordering dinner by himself, and that's something that for other parents you wouldn't even consider.
Mhm.
But having that ability to do that, and I think that sometimes you underestimate how that kind of confidence that they do have in themselves, but it's about kind of fostering that.
Yeah. Does he cook? Does he bake?
Yeah, now well, actually, I feel like I should mention that because his wee sister, his younger sister's great. She's just gone into her teens as well, but she's the baker. We
Okay.
cook, but she bakes, but she now makes everything gluten free. So
So-
she talks about the fact that she bakes with love, in terms of she doesn't follow recipes, she just gives it a go, but she'll always be wanting him to try the cookies and the cakes and the biscuits and things. So she does that, which is good. And I think that he's more recently started kind of doing it himself, like when he was on study leave and things. And he actually made us dinner last night for us all, so pasta. So, and I think when you do, you've got that kind of feeling of pride when you've made something, and then you naturally want to give it a go and eat it and try again. So I think that's something that's a good thing for him to try and do.
Yeah, definitely. And that will help him as well if, when he goes to uni or
Yeah,
when he's out of the house,
yeah,
a little bit later on as well. So,
yeah. Because I would say, as much as there's all the challenges, one of the things that I noticed quite quickly was that he became much more, um, what's the word? Kind of like he would experiment more with food. So things that he maybe wouldn't even have touched before, like things like, I don't know, scrambled eggs, or, loves like loads of fish and mussels and things. And they're probably things that maybe at that age he might not have tried, because he would have gone for a kind of standard option that he likes. Whereas, you'll look at a menu now and kind of try something different. So I definitely see that's much more of a, I think at a younger age he's done that. So some of the things he liked, I didn't try until I was in my late 20s, but
Yeah, but
maybe,
probably if half the menu you can't have, and
well,
there's
that's it.
half, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's quite a good outcome for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's something he likes to kind of try different things now.
Fantastic. So I know you do share things on Instagram,
Yep.
and like most of us and all of us, try to raise awareness and
Yeah.
let people know what it's like and how to do. So, what's your handle on Instagram?
So mum of celiac teen.
Okay, so I'm definitely going to put that at the bottom of the episode anyway. But
Great.
yeah, anyone go and follow Kim and get her updates
And reach out if there's anything, because I think whether it be teen or children or a boy, there's like I say, there's a real growing community in terms of supporting each other when it is boys, and kind of encouraging them to chat about it more and things. So absolutely, always available if anybody needs anything.
I think that is very, very important. That's both. I mean, I was diagnosed later in life, and finding that community is just, it's such a supportive community, which is
Yeah,
incredible.
very much.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. And if you enjoyed the episode, click the subscribe button and then come back well, go and look at the previous months as well, but come back next month as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.